So one distinct thing that I remember when I left my ex was when we had to go back for the second load, me and my friend Cindy. And when we were heading out of town, he followed me. He was drunk and he was following me really closely. And he was what people would consider a constitutionalist. And so he had this giant yellow, he had a Bronco, white Bronco, with a giant yellow flag in the back that said, "Don't tread on me," with a snake on the front. Or on the flag. And so, like, he stood out, right? And mind you, like, he was anyway, very obnoxious. So he was trying to make sure we got out of town safely so things didn't fall out of the back. And, excuse me. He ended up getting pulled over and they asked, if I was okay or whatever. And if I knew he was following me so closely and if, like, he was a problem, if I needed help. And I said no, he was making sure that the stuff didn't fall out of the back of my truck. But the officer decided to, like, investigate and question him anyway, pulled him over. We kept going. Anyway, we're on this main highway, so a lot of people were driving by, could see what was going on. We ended up getting home. It was several months later that I decided to get baptized in the LDS church. It was on Mother's Day, the very first day I went back to church. When I moved, women from the church came and helped me unpack, which I was so grateful for. And so on the first day that I went back to church, a couple things I always hated about the church was that they never had food. And that it was so long. It was like 3 hours long. So my very first day back to church, it was Mother's Day. And my son was, only 4 months old. And it was a beautiful day. So I decided to walk. So him and I walked to church. And I was absolutely terrified. I had joined the LDS church in Redmond where I didn't really know anybody. So, like, going to any church, especially the Mormon church in my hometown, was, like, out of the question. It was absolutely terrifying. Like, this was my old stomping grounds. I was a bartender. Like, I was absolutely a sinner. Did all kinds of crazy stuff. And everyone heard about it because it was a really small town. And so it took a lot of courage to go to that church where I was from. And I remember praying to God the whole way. Like, somebody had said, we go and we do these things for God, not for the people. And even so, I was still absolutely terrified. And I remember telling God, it'd be so perfect if somebody was there that could just, like, grab my hand and take me to my classes and show me what I needed to do. And, God is so faithful. And regardless of the doctrine of any church, my personal relationship with God is what I have a testimony of. And he was faithful to me. And when I got to church for Mother's Day, this elder lady, Sister Jenkins, her and her husband were missionaries from Kentucky, and they were traveling missionaries. Excuse me. And as soon as I walked in, this lady grabs my hand and takes me to all of my classes. And it was absolutely miraculous. And I literally felt God's presence. I literally felt like God was there with me in that moment. And the craziest thing about it was she actually has the exact same birthday as me as well. She's on my Facebook. Hi, Sister Jenkins. You're a huge part of my testimony and I love you so much. And, her and her husband I don't think they were married at the time. Or actually, they were married. She was telling me the story about before they got married. But I just thought it was really cool that a couple, could go off and be missionaries together, and she really helped me. They came and taught me several times, and we were very similar with the same birthday, and yeah, I felt like she was just my own grandmother and my own family, and she really helped me and took care of me, and it was a direct answer to a prayer I just had a few minutes before. So then while I'm at church, God knows this so well, they decided that Sunday to have a luncheon for all the mothers, which it was kind of like the first time in history that the Mormon church had food like that. And it was such a blessing, and it just felt like God was literally like reading my thoughts and really taking care of me every step of the way to encourage me that this is where I was supposed to be. So it, when I was at church, there was a lot of members who were not from my hometown. And so it didn't feel like there were still a lot of members from my hometown, and they were really shocked to see me there. And I felt like for some people it strengthened their testimony to see somebody like me coming to their church. But there were a lot of members who weren't from my hometown, and they were so welcoming. One lady offered to hold my baby so I could eat lunch, and it wasn't scary at all, and it didn't feel like I didn't fit in. It felt like home, and it felt perfect, and I know that that was God. I was absolutely terrified to go back to that church, but I did it despite my fears, and God really carried me through that. And so that's, the first testimony of before I got baptized. And then like all these crazy things happened. I was supposed to get an interview to get baptized, and it just so happened like he was going to be in Bend at the same time I was going to be in Bend to do the interview, and it was like kind of weird how it all happened. And then so a lot of times missionaries will swap in different towns, and it was before I got interviewed by my own bishop, they were swapping, and the missionaries that were there during my interview, or at the church, actually saw, we started talking, and I was explaining that I just moved back from Redmond, and I just moved, and my ex, and all this stuff. And they were like, wait a minute. I was telling him about how he was following us out of town and got pulled over. He's like, wait, does he drive a white Bronco? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, does it have a big yellow flag? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh my gosh, we saw him getting pulled over. So while I'm getting interviewed to get baptized after leaving my ex and coming to Burns to join the Mormon church, missionaries saw the whole thing happen. They saw him getting pulled over and me like basically trying to leave this bad situation. And to me, that was a sign from God that, I was in the right place. And so that was crazy. So I got my interview, I got approved to get baptized. And then like the timing was like perfect for me to get my second interview by one of the stake presidencies. And then I decided to wait a few months because I wanted to get baptized with my daughter. So I waited for her to come back from her summer trip. And me and my daughter was beautiful. We ended up getting baptized together when she was 11. And when I got baptized in the LDS church, like I had to quit smoking. I had to quit drinking. I had to quit doing everything. And it really took a lot actually for me to quit smoking cigarettes because things were so stressful all the time. And I was down to like one cigarette a day, and missionaries showed up and they're like, is there anything we could do for you, to help you out? And there was this giant butt can in the backyard, and every time I'd look at it, I would want a cigarette. So I'm like, you know what? Actually, you could help me throw this butt can away. So it was huge, like giant. And so the three of us picked up this butt can and chucked it in the trash, and like I never smoked a cigarette again, and it's been 7 years. So the second kind of part of my testimony, I was able to quit smoking, quit drinking. When we got baptized, I felt the Spirit so strong, and I felt fulfilled. I felt like, I had really taken the actions to be that pure, better person that I thought you should be when you commit your life to God. So the LDS Church holding me accountable and taking the time, having a section in their what's the word, services, an hour set apart for people, investigators like me, to come and ask questions and talk about things, I think was so critical to my choosing to join this church. Then my ex and I worked things out after I got baptized and wanted to get back together. He decided he would, take lessons and work towards bettering his life. He finally got over the emotions of the first initial strong emotions of the shock of his son passing away. And we were able to reconcile and work things out, and we ended up getting married at the church. He wasn't willing to get baptized and become Mormon, so we just got married. We did not get married in the temple. I have never been to the temple, so I just want to make that clear. But at the time, I was paying tithing, not drinking coffee. I was a devout Mormon, doing everything perfectly. Married my boyfriend so that I could be right with God and we could be a family, and things could be better. And things were better for a really long time. He continued to drink and do certain things, but it wasn't like a problem. And we ended up getting a house together, and I got pregnant again with my youngest son, Dayton. And I remember I was pregnant with him through church and had him as a young baby while I went to church. And then when he was like less than a year old, things got really bad again, and we ended up getting a divorce and going separate ways. And the kind of the embarrassment of getting a divorce